here with the extraordinary Alex Hall, beautiful, intelligent, a realtor at the Oppenheim Group, and a mom, and 9 years post-divorce. And we're really excited to have you on the show to talk about all things divorce and co-parenting and momtrepreneur stuff.
All the fun stuff.
Okay, you've been divorced 9 years.
9 years and counting.
So if you could tell somebody starting the divorce process, what would you say?
If I could tell somebody starting the divorce process, I would say write down exactly what your end goal is throughout the divorce and really stick to what those goals are, because there's so much emotion that comes up throughout a divorce. And it just ends up costing everybody more money and more stress and time. And I think when somebody's like at the point where they finally realize, hey, I'm done with this relationship, all they really want to do is move on with their lives. And the longer you stay in that space of divorce and hostility and toxicity, you're not moving on with your life. And I think a lot of times what happens is the longer you are in the divorce process, it's like it begets itself. So it's like, well, I've been in it for a year now, so I'm really not going to let go of those things that I've been fighting for from the very beginning. And I think there are really big things that should be really important, and there are really small things that are things that you maybe don't want to fight over. And I think that when there's a lot of animosity and there's a lot of, maybe just hard feelings in the relationship, it's really, really hard. So I would say write down what's really important. I didn't even get a divorce attorney when I got divorced. Wow. I got a mediator, and I was like, I just want to be done. And I was so young that I just thought, I wasn't afraid of anything. I was never afraid of anything, like even having kids really young. And so my goal was to separate from this person who I no longer want to be married to. I can make my own money, and I want my kids. Like, I want what's best for my kids. And what's best for my kids is like not going to put them through the court system or being interviewed by a psychologist or fighting, not going to try to like create, a hostile environment with his family and my family. And so hindsight, should I have gotten an attorney? Probably. I've had to work a lot harder. And there's things that I could have gotten that I didn't get. But again, like I put my head on my pillow at night, and I know I did what was right for me in that moment. But I do think that there's just so much emotion that gets involved when you're going through a divorce, and you lose track of what's really important.
You are the poster child for last law. I wish all of my clients had your mindset. It's incredible. One thing I talk to clients about when I consult with them is, what is the end goal here? Because you get so lost in the emotionality, and nobody wins but the lawyers in those moments, because ultimately the court system cannot fix 90% of your grievances. And to your point, people become married to the divorce. Mm-hmm. It is an attachment to their ex. And so I see clients who have lost the marriage then become attached to divorcing their ex as
like an obsession.
Yes. Yeah. And it takes over. Mm-hmm. And then I think ultimately in the end, they're bitter and angry, and they don't like lawyers because of the experience they created.
Of course.
And so oftentimes I'm having those hard conversations with people, and they're feeling like they're losing because I'm telling them to give up on something that's really not that important.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like lawyers get a bad rap no matter what, a lot of the time. Everybody hates a lawyer until you need one, right?
Exactly.
So I think in divorce too, people think like, oh, they're just here. They want to take my money. It's like, well, no, they're charging you because it's a lot more difficult. Like, it's a lot more work. And attorneys, divorce attorneys, whoever it is, would still be successful and, have decent income and salary if people weren't this difficult. Like divorce, what is the divorce rate in Orange County? Like 75%, something like that. You guys would still do okay, even if people didn't drag it out. And I think that it would make everybody's lives a lot easier. So when you're saying to them, hey, like, give up on, like, let's get to the end. Like, I sell real estate. My goal in the transaction is to get you to the finish line.
Close the house.
Close. Yep. Let's be done. Not, I don't want to be stuck in that gray area. I don't want to be stuck in negotiations. And I don't want to be stuck in, who's right, who's wrong, who's paying for what. Let's close, right? And I think you guys have the same goal.
I do.
Yeah.
A lot of lawyers don't. I do. It's really important to me It's how do I get you from point A to point B as unscathed financially, emotionally as I can.
Yeah.
Just like a real estate deal.
Yeah.
Right? It's a very similar, it should be a very similar process. It becomes transactional. But when we're dealing with, you said something really interesting about you had no fear because you were so young. I think women divorcing in their 40s, there is so much fear around having not worked for a decade, being older, not going to be desired by men. So as we get older, you're kind of lucky that you divorced so young because you still had no fear. You were like, bring it on, world.
Of anything. I mean, when you're young, you're like you said, it's just you're fearless.
Yep.
I mean, even when it comes to, with divorce or having children or moving or career-wise. And I think that if we let our lives a little bit more like that, just like, hey, okay, I did it before, or I could do it when I was younger, we would move forward in faith and not in fear. And we get so, it's debilitating.
Completely.
I'm guilty of it myself too with some things. And I have to remind myself of that. And it's one of the, my greatest blessings is going through what I went through and creating who I am now, and still having to pause and be like, bitch, you're a badass. Like, don't get stuck in the fear zone. And I mean, I always say, like, I would have 10 more children, but I don't ever want to get divorced again. Like, I never, ever, ever want to get divorced again. And I didn't have a tumultuous divorce. I didn't have, because I chose the high road, right? I was like, I just want to be done. It could have been very, very tumultuous.
Someone has to choose it. And that's what clients often don't understand. If going in, my ex is going to be an asshole, you make a choice in that moment. You want to take the high road or you want to meet him where he's at?
It was really hard. Like, I had to take, I've always been a very, like, strong-willed, independent woman. I think when I got married so young and I had kids and I was so vulnerable, I did lose a lot of that independence and that strength. And, I was completely dependent on this man, right? And so there was a lot of, I say like, oh, I just chose to do this. I was afraid. I was afraid to fight this man. I was afraid because he threatened me and he told me, like, if you do this, you're going to ruin it. Like, my parents are never going to talk to you again. You're going to ruin our lives for the future. And I was not willing, to risk that. But I didn't want to fight. We had fought enough. And I really did think, because I was like, I can just make a life for myself. Do I really need to fight over the house? Do I really need to fight over, alimony and child support? And so knowing, like you said, knowing who your ex is right? There's part of me, when I look back and I'm like, oh gosh, I could have gotten so much more. But I know I made the right decision because it gave me, like, not peace, because obviously when you're divorced with children, you're attached to that person for the rest of your life. But, I think I did bypass some pretty gnarly hurdles.
You absolutely did. And so you've had to co-parent the last 10 years with this man. Has that relationship improved over time?
Oh my gosh, it's like molasses, like, it's so slow. And without a doubt, anybody that knows me, and my relationship and has seen, like my family who sees it, first front row seat, it's the only reason it's even gotten remotely easier is because of me.
Taking the high road once again.
Oh my God, always taking the high road, always putting my children first. And not that I'm one step ahead of him, but I know how his brain works. And so I hate to say this because he's a good person. He's not a bad person. He's intelligent. He's, he means well. He just doesn't have a lot of the tools, right? The emotional, like, I have a very high EQ. And a very high IQ. He has a very high IQ and really no EQ.
A lack of emotional intelligence in a divorce will ruin it for the more emotionally intelligent person. Yeah. So, and I tell people that often, you have to meet your ex where they are. If during the marriage, your ex did not have an emotional intelligence bandwidth, how can you possibly expect them to have one in the divorce?
Never going to happen.
No, it's going to be worse because they're fearful, they're intimidated, their egos hurt, and you're fighting about money and children. Arguably the two most important things to both of you.
Right.
So don't expect the emotional intelligence light bulb to just turn on.
Right.
It's not there.
Yeah.
I
think men too have a more innate, discernment for somebody trying to take advantage of them.
Oh yes.
Especially here in Orange County, like, oh, you're trying to take advantage of me. And it's like, no one's trying to take it. We, like, at the end of the day, we really do want, like, what's fair. And there is a legal system in place for what is fair in the eyes of the law, right?
Yep.
Whether it is truly fair, whether it's not. I'm not here to make. I'm not
Nope,
the judge and
you
jury.
didn't write the code.
Right? So I do think that a lot of things have happened throughout my, in the divorce and throughout just the entire the entirety of the last 9 years. But again, for me, like my sanity, even though sometimes it's, very slim, it's not worth it. And, I always say, like, sometimes there's seasons with him, and sometimes like he'll call and I'll answer, and I'm just like, no one raises my blood pressure like he raises my blood pressure. And, still to this day, 9 years, 10 years later, I'm just like, oh my God, is it ever going to end? And
what do you think he has on you that triggers you? Do you think it's because you are so practical and have such a high emotional intelligence that you know what he's fighting about is silly and stupid, and you never go to a judge with this issue?
It doesn't make sense. That's why he makes me like,
there's no logic
from 0 to 100. I'm like, you don't make, or he'll be saying something to me that's like the most hypocritical thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, I'm like, what? I'm like, I have to hang up. Like, I can't do this with you. Like, I don't have to do it. I mean, I will say one of the more, the bigger advantages, honestly, was getting away from like the toxicity of his family. And so like my kids will now come home and say things to me about his side of the family. And I feel bad. And I say, I feel bad that you have to deal with those things. And I walk them through it, right?
Because you've been through it.
And I said, so now that my daughter's older and my son is a little bit older, we can have those conversations. And I just say, like, I don't have to deal with that anymore. But I do by proxy, because my children have to deal with it. And it's all the same stuff. Like, it never changes. And that's why I said earlier, they should really teach you more in grade school and in high school, who you procreate with, because you're going to be attached to those people for the rest of your life. And
I think judges often, when I'm in the courtroom arguing over something, I think the great judges I'm in front of always come back to that. Like, when they're having to make a difficult decision, I feel like they're thinking, I didn't choose to procreate with this person. Yeah. You're bringing a problem to me that the two of you couldn't work out. I didn't have a baby with this person. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to make a decision unattached, and you're upset with it. But at the end of the day, this isn't my problem. It's yours.
Right. It is.
And so we forget that when you're in love, I think you overlook many things.
Everything.
Yeah, you overlook it all. So, things that maybe you overlooked in a moment are coming back to haunt you post-divorce, are coming back to haunt you when you're co-parenting. And it's really about radical acceptance at that point.
Totally.
You have to accept, this is who I'm co-parenting with. Mm-hmm. This is who I'm divorcing. Yeah. Because the more resistance, just your attorney's bills going up, you're calling your lawyer to complain about something, exists because this is who he is, or this is who she is. So how can you, I tell clients all the time, a divorce is a business transaction. Show up as your best business self. Mm-hmm. Put on your power suit, come sit down with me, and let's figure this out. But the more emotionality you bring into it, all you're doing is I'm billing you and I'm here for you. But I also don't feel good about charging you for you to tell me things I can't fix.
Well, and you're like, even with my attorney, that I used in the past, I was like, we're having these 30-minute phone calls, and then I'm getting charged. I'm like, okay, no more phone calls. You're not my therapist.
Exactly.
I don't need to vent to you.
Nope.
We're going to do emails from now on. I will, process all of my thoughts, put it in a calculated email that's business minded.
Yes.
How do we move forward? What are our solutions? What are our options? Come back to me. Not like, well, you'll never believe what he did this time. Or you never believe what he said. Or I can't believe he's doing this. And this is just how he is. And you helping the attorney understand how this person, like, you guys see right through people. Like, and at the end of the day, it's a business transaction, like you said.
And I'm sure it's similar to a lot of what you deal with in real estate. When you walk into a client's house and their house is the nicest on the market. Right. It has the best view. It has the most beautiful backyard. Right. And you're like, I've seen 1,000 beautiful homes. Yeah. They want to sell it for something way out of their price range. Yeah. And so it's really about treating your divorce like a business negotiation and listening to the expert as to what the law provides you, and then making the decision as to, you can get what the law gives you, but if it's going to result in a terribly resentful relationship with your co-parent, do you want to do something else?
Right.
And I think once you're empowered with that knowledge, you can make that choice.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about single mominate, because it's a lot. And you've done it so well. So what have been the biggest challenges for you in that label and the stigma around that label, and how have you navigated that?
I mean, I don't really know what I don't know what the stigma is and what the label is. I think that I've never started with that. Like, I'm a single mom. It's never been my identity, but it is my identity. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the biggest challenge with that is just trying to be everything at once, wearing so many hats, trying to do it right. And having a single income producing household, and wanting to give your kids everything that they want. And, and that is, again, like where finances come in. So I don't have this big check coming in every month from my ex. And I still want to provide for my kids. And I think that there's, I got interviewed like 3 years ago. And it wasn't about being a mom, but it was about real estate. And they're like, okay, so what's the chip on your shoulder? And I was like, I don't have a chip on my shoulder.
I'm just a bad bitch.
Well, yeah, but he was like, you've got to have there's something like that's like, motivate. I'm like, my kids motivate me. And I was like, and I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I don't know if it's a chip on my shoulder, but it's definitely like, I do somewhere subconsciously feel like I have something to prove.
Well, and that,
and
I'm glad I wasn't at that interview with you, because that would have upset me, because I think a driven woman.
He meant well.
Okay, good.
And I try not to take things personally, right?
Yeah.
So like, I didn't take it personally. He meant like what, like a lot of people who have risen to the top or had failures or had a really, not your orthodox way of going. Like, I didn't have anything handed to me. My parents, we had a great life, like, but we weren't like, I'm not inheriting anything. Nothing's being passed down to me. I don't have a safety net. And I do think that everybody always thought, like, once I married my husband at the time, everybody thought that everything was handed to me. Like, everybody thought that everything came easy to me, even before that, because maybe it's the way I look or the way I carry myself and I make things look easy.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a long time, I always like wanted to prove like it's not that way. And then I was like, fuck everybody. I don't give a shit. Like, you think whatever you want. But I still do inherently think that there is an underlying, like, a little bit of motivating factor where I'm like, I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to lose, because I think the odds are stacked against me.
Yeah.
And I don't like that.
Yeah.
And
I love
I'm
that.
not going to be a statistic in that way.
So do you feel some pressure, outside pressure, to prove yourself?
Not outside pressure to it's internal.
Okay.
Like, I don't give a shit what anybody, thinks, or except my kids. I do kind of care what my kids think.
Yeah.
But I don't have that, but it's this internal thing where, I've created this life for myself, and I just don't want to like let anything really get in my way or hold me back or say like, oh, well, it's because I'm a single mom, I can't do these things. Like, yeah, it's twice as hard to do things, right? But it's a motivator, to try, to go against that grain, when things are, when the odds are stacked against you of being a single mom and, wanting to have a career and be a businesswoman. And, people think, I think people look at me and, look up to that. They're like, wow, you do it all. But I do want people to know that it's not easy. Like, I think it looks really easy from the outside. And there are really, really, really difficult days. I mean, there are days where, when I'm done, working, or I close, 2 escrows and, the kids are with their dad and I've just finished filming. And I'm like, I just need to like have a whole day where I'm doing nothing.
Yeah.
Like,
an 8th day of the week. I always talk about that.
I need to do nothing so that I can recharge, because it's not like go, 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 go. Like, I do burn out.
And you're a normal mom. You got to sign the permission slip. You got to get whatever the school needs. You got to respond to a teacher email.
Everything.
These are all real life things that you deal with and I deal with, and the struggle is real for women. I think I
need a wife. That's what I always say.
Oh yeah.
Like, I literally need a wife. I don't need a husband. I need a wife.
I joke 99%. Like, on days I'm 80% lesbian, 99% lesbian, never 100%.
I just need a wife
because I love my husband. But at the end of the day, yes,
we just get shit done.
We do,
without having to be asked.
Exactly.
Like, you just know a woman knows what a woman needs.
It is very true. It's not about what do you need me to do? It's I need you to ask that question.
Oh my God. When my mom is over, I'm like, I just need one of you here all the time.
Yes.
She knows before I even know what I need.
Looking back, what's one mistake you can own from your marriage that has nothing to do with him?
Nothing. Nothing. Oof. I take a lot of responsibility for not honestly speaking up for myself sooner. I think that by the time I had found like my voice or realized that I was done, I did express like, please, let's go to therapy. Like, I'm not happy. but I was so fulfilled with my children.
Totally.
So, and my ex at the time, he was in law school, like he was gone all the time, working, and I was okay with that. I was like, I got this. Like I didn't have any financial stress. I was raising my kids, and I was happier than a pig in poo. Like so happy, and I think by the time that 7 years came around, I was like, okay, like I just
kids need you a little less.
They need me. I mean, they needed me less, but I was like, because I also had kids so young. I had my first at 19 and my second at 23. None of the moms were my age. Like all of my friends were either still in college or they had moved away, and so I didn't have like a mom group of friends.
Yeah.
And I also I was like, I don't want to like go over and like talk about diapers and talk about bottles all the time. I was like, I want to like have an intelligent conversation. Not that moms aren't intelligent.
No, I get
was like,
it.
I want to hustle. I want to negotiate. Like I want something of my own. Like I felt like my brain cells were kind of dying a little bit, talking about the same things over and over again. And, so then I tried working, and that was a problem in the relationship. And
a problem for him.
Like he just wanted, I started to realize more and more and more that he just wanted to control everything. Very jealous, very controlling. And when I bowed down, everything was great. And I really had no life. Like I had no friends. He didn't even like me, like going to the grocery store, like very, very controlling. And, my sister was actually the one that pointed it out. She was like, you're just not the same. Like you're not who you were. And I was like, well, yeah, I'm married and I have kids now. She's like, no, like when I see you guys interacting, and nobody wants to ruffle a marriage up. Like nobody wants to go and make things worse. Right. And I was just like, I always said like I was a good little girl and everything was fine. And then when I started voicing, how I felt or like what I wanted to do, shit really hit the fan. And by that point, I was like a cat on a hot tin roof. I was like, I got to get out of here. And so I wish that I would have, and I mean, maybe if I had been older, I wish that I would have maybe.
I think your fearlessness pushed you to leave, because I think a lot of women stay for the kids.
For sure. I thought that was hard for me.
Yeah. Did you contemplate that?
Oh my God. It was like the most depressive time in my life because I felt so guilty. And I tried, normally like in a relationship, I'm out. Like there is no going, like when I know and I did know that I was out, but we tried. I mean, even after we got divorced, I tried for years to go back and try to date him again. And I was like, it's just never, there was, a lot of issues in the marriage, the control and, the lack of respect, and there was, infidelity. And so I was like, I can't go back. Emotionally, I can't go back.
It's a grieving process, I think, for women when they know the marriage is over, but they stay because you lay down with your kid at night and you look at that precious face and you think, there's no way I'm giving up 50% of my nights with this child. And I think women have to grieve that a little bit longer than men.
We grieve that more than we grieve the divorce.
100%. Yeah. And then it gets to a point where the voice to leave is stronger than the voice to stay. And that is when a woman ultimately decides, I'm done. Yeah. And you've now been doing it for 9 years. And looking back, do you have any regret about
getting divorced?
Yes.
I don't have any regrets about getting divorced. I do wish that, there were just certain elements of the marriage that didn't transpire, because I do think that you can work through a lot of things if both people are willing and able and are, putting in that fight and have, the tools, right? Go to the therapist, do the things. And, I do think that, I mean, I don't know a statistic, but I would say a very high number of people who get divorced could have worked it out, if they both really wanted to. I think usually it's one that really, really wants it, and maybe one that doesn't want it so much, or one that doesn't want it at all. And at that point, it's like either too late or there's too much resentment, too much water under the bridge. But we were so young, we grew apart. There were so many different, variables. I just, there were things that I think, you feel like a failure a little bit. You're like, wow, especially for like my type of personality, I'm like, what? Like, I don't like failing. Yeah. I don't like, I like success. And I do think that there are certain things for me personally, I could not get past.
And I like to say marriage is a diversion. It's not a failure. You know, it's a part of your life that didn't go as you expected, but look at you now. And you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that process.
For sure.
And, you know, so many divorces, we talked about this, get caught up in blame. And the other person being the villain, right? It's all his fault, or he did this or he did that. And you want to feel validated by your peers, by your friends. How did you kind of get past that? Because you seem very much not that way, that it's not about blaming him. This is the circumstance. This is what I'm dealing with.
I think that, I mean, I remember, you know, when I realized like I want out of this marriage, I'm not happy. There was a moment, I was in my car and I was driving home, and I just prayed, and I was like, God, give me a reason. Because I felt like I didn't have a reason enough.
Reason to leave?
To leave.
Okay.
I felt like just like my own selfish, like being selfish and just wanting to be happy and wanting to like be in love with your husband. Like that's not enough. Like you've got 2 children, you know, dig your heels in and suck it up. And I'm not kidding you. Like within 24 hours, like a lot of stuff came to the table. Where I was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't mean that much stuff, God. But it was almost like either you're gonna, and there was part of me when I found out all of this information, I was like, holy cow, like this is good. Like this is the dark cloud that's been following our marriage for so many years, and now we can move past it, and now we can go to therapy, and now like when I would talk to him, like, aren't you set free now that I know this? Like you've been living double lives. Like no wonder, you know. And then I realized, okay, wait a minute. This is something that I don't know how I can move past this. And so.
And was he ready to? Was he ready to move beyond it?
No. Oh no.
No.
Move beyond what I had found out. Yeah. Yes. He was like, let's just figure it out. You know, let's go. Let's make it work. And he didn't want to get divorced by any means. And that's the other thing is when one person really wants, especially if you're like the woman and you're breaking up your beautiful family, you're like, this is making it so much worse rather than, oh, my husband left me and I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And so I think he feels, you know, talk about like the blame and who someone's the victim and someone's the villain. I think he villainizes me because he always says like, I didn't want the divorce. Right. I'm like, okay, you're the one who, you know, put all like death by 1,000 cuts. Like you know, not that I'm not really, I want to take part in it, but I think I was a very good wife. I was a very good wife. I was a very good daughter-in-law.
I have no doubt.
I was a very, very good partner, a very good mom. Like, no wonder he didn't want to divorce me. You know, of course he wouldn't. Well, why would he? You know, he wanted his cake and want to eat it too. And that happens in relationships. And I think people lose themselves in a lot of relationships. And that sucks. And I think when it comes to a point when it's, you know, too late is when it really sucks.
Yeah. And it happens often. I don't often see like the parties that file and then reconcile sometimes. And it does warm my heart, even though that's what I do for a living. But I think it comes down to communication. If men cannot or women cannot communicate how they're feeling, which takes a very vulnerable individual to say, my needs are not being met. I am not happy. Then, like you said, too much water under the bridge. And I think at that point, one person has made the decision to leave. And there's often no turning back because they've made up their mind.
I also think relationships are so much different now than they were like when our grandparents were married, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like there wasn't a lot of talk about like how I'm feeling, how you're feeling. Are my needs being met? It was like, we're married, you provide for me, I'm the homemaker. And how was your day? Good. How was yours? Good. We take the kids to school. And like, it was just this routine thing. And people were there was hardly any divorces. Right. It was like, we're married, we're in it. What do I think people were like living their best lives? I don't know. But I think that there's this image now, and with all due respect to your career, I mean, divorce is crazy high. People really think that the grass is greener on the other side.
100% agree.
And that it's an option, right? Like divorce is, and it is. And I think that everybody deserves to be happy in a relationship. But I do feel like there is a part of it where people are like, well, I don't want to work for it. I don't want to fight for it. I just want to go and move on to another relationship, or I want to be out of this one. It's like, you're going to run into like every set of relationships has its a different set of problems.
Yep.
So I think finding the person who, even if you have problems with, which everybody does, it's like finding that person that you don't want to give up on, finding that person where, you know, you love each other so much that you're willing to work through your problems and like come back to each other at the end of every day.
Absolutely. I always say love with another adult is conditional, right? We love our kids unconditionally. Yeah. They can probably do
literally
the
anything.
worst things, and I'm still gonna love my kid. But it's conditional with a spouse. They have to meet your needs, you have to meet theirs, and you have to talk about when those needs are not being met.
So wow, I never really. You're right. I mean, yeah, I always think about that, like, oh, because I've met people and I'm like, oh, your love is conditional though. Like but it is. I mean, I guess anybody other than a child or a dog, maybe. Like it's conditional.
It's unreasonable to assume it isn't, right?
Yeah.
Because your love for your child is just a depth that, you understand.
Isn't
as a
that
mom.
crazy?
Yeah.
That is so wild.
Yeah. Do you believe in marriage? Will you get married again?
I do believe in marriage.
Yeah.
I think that, God help me not make the same mistakes twice, but I do believe in the commitment. I do believe in finding a person, like I said, that you're not willing to give up on, and that union, until death do us part. And I think with the right person, it's possible. And I do think that with the wrong person, obviously it will end up either being a very, very long and miserable life together or divorce, which is also long and miserable usually. But I do believe, and when people ask that, do I think that like the government needs to be involved in, our relationship? No, but I think it definitely puts a lot more, restraints on people saying, oh, let's just break up.
Yeah.
And it makes it harder to do that. And I think that sometimes we need that. It's easy to walk away from some relationships. And I think that in the union of marriage, I do think that there's a level of commitment that there is with that's unlike any other.
Yeah, and I always, whenever I see like a cute senior couple, I just think it's so adorable. They've been married 30, 40, 50 years, and they're holding hands. And, I think love evolves over time. I think sometimes social media probably has a large part to do with we romanticize relationships, and we see someone that's been married for 10 years posting like this romantic moment with their spouse, and then we look to our husband who's just farted on the couch and we're like, I don't have that, should I leave? I think it's hard because obviously people share their highlight reel, they share the good times, but we need to talk more about the bad times, the hard times, the struggles, because it normalizes relationships and just how hard they are.
It is so important and I'm an adult. Like I think about this with my kids and social media, and it gets the best of me. It's it's just human psychology, right? Yep. But it's hard to watch a video and be like, okay, well, yeah, but they say still fight. Like, you just don't think about that.
No.
You're thinking about the really cute video that you see and how happy it is and the dopamine effect and all the things, right? So, those videos, I say the same thing. People do want to see the other side, but at the end of the day, the truth is that people don't actually want to watch that. Like there are people on Instagram that are like friends of mine from like high school, right? And so I follow them and I have to unfollow them. If people are way too happy, I have to unfollow them. And if people are way too sad and only talking about depressive shit, I also have to unfollow them.
That's a good point.
We go to detach a little bit from reality, right? We go on social media to see the funny videos, to see the happy videos, not to be like, oh my God, like that's depressing. Even if we're like depressed ourselves, there's a little bit of it where we're like, okay, that's relatable.
Yes.
And it makes me feel a little bit better because I feel seen, I feel heard, and not everything is perfect and roses and butterflies. But you don't want to see it all the time.
Yes.
Right? It's like watching a sad movie every single night.
It's a very good point.
So it's important for us as, intellectual people, as mature adults, to have the wherewithal to know not everything is what you see.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but it's hard as an adult even when you see it every day. You're a divorce attorney. You're like, these aren't like, can somebody be happily in love and be in this? And is this video real that I'm seeing of them? Could absolutely be, but they don't have a perfect relationship. Nobody has a perfect relationship. No, but it does. Like this is really messed up, but. It's what I need. So if I see there was such a long period of my life where I'm like, I want to get remarried. I want to have more kids. I want that happily ever after. Like I felt like I got kind of robbed of it. Like I had the kids. I thought it was going to go a certain way and it didn't. And I thought by now I would have had that again. Right. And so if I see like this perfect family on Instagram, and like, how there's like the family Instagrams where you see the husband, you see the kids, you see the dog, and it's like a totally family. You see everybody and you see their personalities. It's so fun to watch, but I'm like, I can't watch that. It makes me sad. Yeah. It makes me sad. And I'm like, I'm very happy for you, but I can't watch that all the time because it makes me feel bad about myself.
Aww.
Do you know what I mean? So I'm like, happy for you. You're great.
Yes.
Beautiful family.
Unfollow.
But I'm like, can't see it all the time. Let's watch. I want to watch the dogs and the animals and the CEOs and the women and all that stuff. But too much of that makes me feel, and I'm like I said, I'm a mature adult. I know it's not perfect.
I know. It's hard. Social media has changed our lives forever. I think it's changed our kids' lives forever. Divorce is interesting because I see good people going through terrible times. So I see people at their worst. Yeah. Which is very challenging every single day. So I want to see the French bulldogs rolling over on Instagram.
Yeah, me too.
I want to see the stuff that makes me laugh. I want to see the women empowerment and the CEOs and all that. So for me, it's just a little bit of an escape from reality. I try and take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, you're right. It's when you see it constantly in your face, you have to remember as an intelligent adult, this is just someone's highlight reel. Someone is not going to post the worst fight they had with their husband last night on Instagram for us all to see.
Yeah. Even when you see the women, they're like crying. You're like, so you got out your phone, you recorded yourself crying. It's like, we can't win, honestly, sometimes. No. Like, especially as a woman, like you really can't win.
No.
So I just think that it's important for us individually to realize, that it's, it's like when you go out it's like the Keeping Up with the Joneses. It's like when you go out with everybody. And I used to say that about Newport, like, because I come from a very small town. And, when we moved here, I realized very quickly, like, people don't have a lot of friends, like actually really close knit friends. Like my parents had like a group of 20, maybe 25 people that were very, very good friends, like all married couples, most of them divorced now. But 20 years ago, when I was growing up, a huge group of friends, like friends you could call at any given time of day. They would be there if you needed them. Not like, hey, do you want to like go to dinner friends? Right. But the difference is that there wasn't this perfection idealization of like, I can't let you in because then you'll know I'm not perfect. I can't tell you that Tom and I fight, or I can't tell you that we're struggling financial, or that I had a miscarriage, or that one of our kids is sick, because then I'm not perfect. And you can't bond unless there's vulnerabilities.
Exactly.
So I feel like a lot of, and not everybody, but generally speaking, there's a lot less of that connection here in, Southern Orange County, because everybody feels this pressure to be perfect. And so nobody's like really, really, really close friends, which made me really sad, know? And so for me, I'm like, I meet somebody, I'm like, tell me your deepest, darkest secrets. What are your vulnerabilities? Like, how, what was your childhood like? And it's just very different than a lot of relationships here. And I feel like we need, like, even in marriages, we have to have our friends, right? I think 100%. A lot of people expect their husband or their wife to be everything that they need. And it's like, you can also have friends. Like if your husband's like, not that funny, right? You're like, but my best friend is hilarious, right? If I need a good laugh, I go over here to her. Yeah. Or if I need to go, like, maybe my husband doesn't like shopping and I want someone to have fun and go shopping with. Let him go golfing, go shopping with one of your friends, right? Like those needs can be met in different ways, and not putting the pressure on a significant other to fill every need that you have and need met.
Great advice. It's important. And a marriage cannot fill voids that you're longing for as an individual, right? Yeah. We're all imperfect people, but two imperfect people together can have a great life if they acknowledge their imperfections.
Yeah.
So,
and then divorce rate would be lower.
It would.
Bad for you.
I'd have it. Bad for me. Good for society.
Good for society.
How are we doing, Nick? Is he talking? Okay, I think we're good. Let me see if there's anything else. Alex, you were such a joy.
Thank you.
To have. You're so smart.
I wonder if
should I ask you
people
anything
trust
else?
you more because you're a woman, an attorney who's a woman. Like feel
or
like
they think I'm a raging bitch because I'm so honest.
Maybe men think that, but I feel like as a woman, I would be like, okay, I would want a female attorney for me.
Yeah,
especially in family law.
I think my parents are from New York. I am so direct sometimes that I think people, when they're in that emotional state, can sometimes take offense with how direct I am to be like, get over it, move on.
Yeah.
Because I'm helping, like I'm trying to save them from themselves.
Yes.
So it's challenging sometimes because the very sensitive, sometimes meeker individual is going to struggle with my strong personality.
Yeah.
But then sometimes the real strong personality females don't like the strong personality.
Totally.
So it's like you picking your attorney, I always say it's like picking out a dog. Like you have to like them.
Totally.
There's another Instagram attorney that said, you don't have to like me. I really think you do, because this is such a personal moment in your life. And if you don't like me in the intake, if you don't like my energy, like this is what you're going to get.
It's going to be a way more difficult transact. Like it's going to be way worse.
So you really have to, it's an interview for both of us. Like I need to make sure I work well with you. You need to make sure you work well with me. And I'm very much endgame. Like we're not going to sit here and talk about, I get he's a narcissist.
Yeah.
I get it. I get he's cheated. I get he, doesn't feed your kids the best
doesn't
foods
put them to bed on time.
Yeah,
like, I get
always.
it. Right.
It's always those grievances, but people don't realize the court system isn't going to fix that.
Yeah.
You're not going to lose your kids because he puts them to bed at 9:30. It's just, you're going to have to live with it because again, you procreated with them.
And I think too, women and men, think like, oh, they just need to be with me full time. Like the kids need a relationship with both of their parents, unless they're like actually abusive and neglected and all of the things.
Absolutely.
If it's doing more harm to be with the other parent than good, then okay, right? But it's usually not the case. It's us wanting to control it because we do it better. We know them better. We're more, involved, all of those things. But at the end of the day, kids just need time with both of their parents.
They do. And I'm sure you have adult friends that talk about their parents' divorce. And I often, like as a divorce attorney, I'm so interested to hear from my adult friends how their parents' divorce affected them. Because I think oftentimes some of my friends are like, it was fine. My parents got along. I saw both of them. And then the ones that had a very high conflict divorce that they experienced have the most pain from it. Yeah. So I try to remind clients of that. Like your children won't necessarily remember the divorce itself, but they're going to remember how you guys treated each other as two independent people after the divorce.
And kids hear everything.
They do.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You think they don't, they do.
Yep.
And I think it's also, we get so frustrated, as just being a human. And it's really sad because I think a lot of people then, like you said, they want somebody to like have their side, take their side, or they want to be right, and they'll talk to their kids about it.
Oh,
and
I
like,
know.
Oh my gosh.
I tell people all the time, usually women, your ex-husband and the father of your children have to be two separate people in your mind because your frustrations of an ex-husband are valid.
Yeah.
You cannot take that to your children as their father.
And it'll backfire. I do think that in the long run, as they become adults and have a relationship with that person of their own, they will come to and be like, well, mom said this or dad said that.
Right.
And I let, my ex, like, they come to me now and they're saying things. And I've always tried to be a really strong and play devil's advocate. And it got to a point where my daughter was like, can you just not say nice things right now about
That's
him?
awesome.
And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to listen. And she's like, I know. And she's so freaking smart.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, listen, I want to be here to support you. I get it's so frustrating. I totally get it. And I was like, nobody gets it better than I do because now he takes the same way it's all her now. I'm like, she got the the brunt end of it now. And so I'm like, I wish I could take that away from you. But I have to stop myself now because she's older. And I'm like, Alex, she's your daughter. She's his child. Mm-hmm. She's not your BFF where you can go and, put all, because I read a book way, way after my divorce. And I was having an issue with my daughter. She was like 10 or 11. And she was just being weird towards me. And we've always had a very close relationship. And there was this moment in our lives where she was just, what it came down to was like, okay, dissect. And I was like, it was disrespect. It was like, she doesn't respect me. Something's going on. And I was like researching it. And so I found this book, which is so cliche. It's called Co-Parenting with a Narcissist. And yet I actually think that he was a narcissist. That term has been so thrown around. I didn't. And then I read this book and I was like, oh my God, talk about feeling understood and heard. Like to a T, the things that were happening with my children towards me was exactly what was in this book. And it told me like how to turn it around and what's going on. And it was like the holy grail. I read it in like 2 days. And
it gave you the tools to navigate him instead of trying to fight the system and change him.
100. And all I have is like the kids come back from his house and I'm dealing with my kids. Like how do I psychologically, emotionally, like be there for my kids and not let him either turn them against me. And what was happening was, and I'll keep it short, but his family was like saying really negative things about me every time she was there. And she was coming home to me and resenting me because when my name would get brought up, she would feel like shit. Yeah. Like she would have this feeling like I'm uncomfortable. And I used to tell her like, you have a right to stand up for yourself and for me and say, please stop talking about my mom or remove yourself from the situation. And
how hard is that for a 10-year-old in a sea of adults?
Almost impossible. Right. And even if she would remove herself, it still would subconsciously bring up this really nasty feeling for her, right? So she just associated mommy with feeling bad. And so once I talked to her about that, it was like this cloud had been lifted, like she could take a breath. And I was like, listen, this is, it was like this, what they said is that children inherently, if you say something bad about a child's parent,
you're talking about them. Yeah, because they're half you.
They're a part of you.
Yes.
So if I'm saying your dad's a piece of shit, your dad doesn't give me any money,
he
doesn't help me. They hear that. So I think if more parents could understand that, whether they understand it or not, that's the fact. So if every time you say something negative about your ex, whether you're the mom or the dad, you're saying it to your child. Like if that doesn't hit home for you and give you the ability to reel it in, then I feel bad, and at the end of the day, the children are the ones who suffer. So it's just, you got to control what you can control. And I do think that, reading those books or talking to somebody that can really like validate or help you understand and give you the tools.
It's all about the tools, because you're not going to change him. You're not going to change his family.
Right.
So give you the tools in the toolbox to do the things to minimize the damage to the kids.
Right. And I do think that what you said, like, I think people come to attorneys and they want you to, same with real estate agents. I'm like, I'm the psychologist, I'm the babysitter, I'm the, all of the things. And it kind of is part of the territory. And I'm very direct too. I'm very to the point. And I do agree, like somebody that's trusting you, there's a very big process like it is in your field. I agree. People have to like you. They have to know you, like you, and trust you. And without those three elements, the transaction is not going to be as smooth as it is. And when somebody trusts you and they like you and you're being direct, they're like, okay, you're working towards my best interest.
Right.
I trust you.
Right. And you're delusional if you think everyone out there is going to like you. Right. No. I'm never offended by a client that's like, I went with someone else. That's great.
Do what you need to do.
That person is, oftentimes I say you pick the right person because I know who they hired and it's a much better fit.
Right.
And that's the beauty of decisions, right? You get to make them and
being
it's
successful.
your divorce. Yeah.
When I was much younger in my career, I didn't want to let any client go.
I remember.
And now I'm doing what's best for everybody involved, because if I'm working, uphill or against the grain and it's a really rough, turbulent transaction with the client who maybe doesn't like me, or I'm butting heads with the husband because I'm the alpha male and they're the alpha male and it's just not working. It's like, now I can cherry pick, and I'm like, we're not the best fit, but I'm going to put you in the hands of somebody who's a fabulous fit for you, and you're going to be so happy. And I'm willing to walk away from a check because I can, and it's going to make my life easier in the long run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know you know what I mean. Yeah.
That's a wrap for today, Alex. I want to thank you. I really enjoyed my time with you. I felt like I was sitting on the couch with a glass of wine with a girlfriend. You had a lot of really great things to say, and I hope everybody listening really takes what you said to heart, because truly you felt like the poster child for every client I would want at my office. I mean that.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah, you've learned so much, and I think that you can really save a lot of people from themselves just starting this process and embarking on this journey. So thank you for your time.
Oh, it was such a pleasure being here. Thank you.